back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, I'm determined to film more videos, so I am back. It's only been like 2 days since I filmed my last video. We're on a roll. What are we talking about today? 3 books that I said I was going to review for you guys. First one I want to talk about is the second one in a series, so I'm going to be fairly brief about it because obviously it's the second one. But I wanted to talk about this book because I read it at a good time for me. I needed cozy reads and I needed something to pull me back into reading. I mentioned in my last video that reading wasn't something I was doing for the last few months, and I wanted to be, but I just wasn't in the right headspace and I couldn't get back to that. So this book was a really, really good part of pulling me back into reading. It hooked me back in, and I'm so pleased that it did. It's a very easy read, this whole series is. It reminds me a lot of the Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan, which is a series that I absolutely loved when I read it a few years back, and I love this one for a similar reason. We follow a main character called Mildred, who is kind of like this, essentially she's a spinster in this world. It's a kind of world where England, if you're not married by a certain age, then you're considered a spinster and you kind of just look after the kids of your sister, which is what Mildred has been doing. And then one day she gets this egg stone thing, which turns out to be a dragon egg. That's pretty clear from book 1, the blurb and everything, so I'm not saying that's a spoiler, but yeah, dragons become a thing, and she is quite an unlikely heroine, basically. She goes on this adventure with the dragon and about the dragon and for the dragon, and this is the continuation of that adventure. The first book kind of deals with uncovering about the dragon and the situation that's unfolding around the dragon, but the second book is more about progressing into a what do we do now situation. So Mildred and her 2 friends, who are a vicar and the caretaker from the house of the vicarage, they are on this mission throughout Wales to go and find something, which I'm not going to reveal because it's revealed in book 1, but I found this a very cozy read. It is a story which has lots of difficulties for the main characters, but equally it doesn't feel like it's a world-shattering difficulty. It doesn't feel like the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against them. It feels like they are a team of people who can come together, they're friends, they're caring for one another, they're helping one another, and they're determined to get to their end goal and whatever that may be. So I really like the sort of overcoming, banding together kind of storyline that you see throughout this, and I'm really pleased that I picked this one up because it was just perfect timing for me to read it and to enjoy it and to get my head back into that good space of reading. So I have to say that I highly recommend this series. I think I enjoyed the second one actually slightly more than I enjoyed the first one, so I would say that it's a series that seems to be growing more as it goes, and I am excited to find out where it goes in the final installment. I do think some of it is a little bit predictable in places, but that doesn't take away from the actual story being a fun one. I still really enjoyed the story, I just kind of anticipated some of the twists, but that's fine. Sometimes that's not what you're reading the story for, and I think for this one it was definitely about getting those cozy vibes in, getting that friendship vibes, just making a story that was going to capture, if it's not a child, it's a cat running through. I don't think you can see her, but she's here. There she is. I don't have the child today, now I have a cat. Thought this was a good time for me to read it, and I wanted to recommend the series to you guys. So if you haven't checked out this series before, I would recommend giving it a go when you want something to really mix up your palette and give you a cleanse between some heavier books. This is the perfect series for that. Next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I kind of mentioned a little bit in my previous video, and that is this one, The Judas Blossom. I think I read to you guys in that my little snapshot review, which is in the book, so I won't go over that again. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about kind of what this book is actually about. This book comes out relatively soon, and so I want to get it on your radars if you don't already know about it. The Judas Blossom, it is a story that is based on the Mongol Empire, and we are following a variety of different characters around this world. We are following a conqueror who is called Hulugu. Khan. I do apologise for how I'm going to say all these names because they will be completely wrong. I have no idea how you say them, but Hulagu Khan is the descendant of Genghis Khan. The fierceness of the Mongol expansion is kind of what we are focused on for this story, and he is one of the key players in that. He's brutal, he's aggressive, and the writing of the author really kind of conveyed the ambition of this main character to expand and continue growing this empire, the pressure he's under, and also the pressure from surrounding forces, but also from himself. He's not the nicest guy, to be honest, but it's interesting to get a look into his head and see why he thinks he needs to keep expanding, how he achieves that. We have 4 sort of main characters, so that is one of the main characters. We have Temujin, who is a bit of a disappointment to his father. He is the son of Khan. He was quite refreshing because, as I said, Hulagu is kind of not this character that you want to hang out with or follow particularly or root for. He's pretty bloodthirsty, and I think Temujin is kind of the opposite of that. Like, he's really not bloodthirsty. He just kind of floats through life trying lots of different things, and eventually he kind of sparks a little bit of purpose in this story, and that kind of changes the course of his life quite drastically. But I found him quite a refreshing read, a refreshing viewpoint. With Hulagu Khan, we do have this really brutish character, but I do think also we have a little softening of that character when we see into his love life. That's the only time that the facade of this war leader kind of cracks a little and you see underneath, and I liked having that element. We have another character who is called Coco Chin. She is forced to marry the Khan, but she rarely sees him because he is off expanding the empire, and so she kind of wants to find her own direction, and she goes through some back streets and darker kind of twists in her storyline to decide what she wants to pursue and how she's going to do that. She goes behind some people's backs, she gets into some sticky situations. I liked her story. Finally, we have a character who is called Kaivon, and Kaivon is like this rebel kind of turned ally maybe character. He is actually someone whose culture was overrun by the Khan, and he kind of gets forced into working for the Khan, but actually he is essentially a rebel who's trying to be converted by the Khan. His story was good. I liked him because I think his was a bit more complex than some of the other stories, and he's kind of playing both sides, and he isn't even sure where he's going to end up, because when he starts, he's obviously fiercely opposed to the Khan, but when he is forced into this role of leadership within the army, he kind of has to rethink, like, how is he going to approach things to get the best outcome for his people? Is a full rebellion going to achieve things, or is it just going to make things worse? This cat. Get out of the shot, cat. Truly, you're always going to have distractions on this channel now, it seems, because everyone just wants to get in on the action of filming the videos. The magic of this world is quite background in this particular volume of the story. I wonder if it's going to show up a lot more in later books. It definitely feels like it will, because one of the main characters kind of taps into the magical side of things later in the book, and it feels as though that's only the beginning of the potential that this character could have. So I'm excited to see where that goes, but in this particular book we don't see an awful lot of magic kind of at the forefront of the story. There's just moments of that, although it is quite powerful. I felt like the exhilarating pace of this was good. I felt like the writing was strong. I also enjoyed kind of getting a little glimpse at history of the Mongol Empire, because I didn't know much about it, and when you read the author note at the end, it sort of talks about how this is based on some of the reality of what happened. Obviously the characters are fictionalized and they've changed how things were done and, you know, reimagined things, but I liked the idea that it is based in that kind of culture, and you do feel like it is a different kind of culture to a lot of the cultures that we read about in Western fantasy, so I'm excited to see more different cultures being displayed. I think anyone who likes stories by Ken Liu, who likes stories by David Hare, stories that just have that different culture to them, would enjoy this particular book. I do feel like I got to the end of this book and enjoyed it throughout and felt like there was a lot more to come. So I'm excited to see when the next one comes out. Obviously this one's literally about to come out, so it will be a little while, but I'm definitely excited for the next one to come out because I think it's going to be really fun, and I'm keen to see more from this series and this author. So I'd love for you guys to let me know if you are planning on picking this one up, and especially once you read it, what do you think of it? I gave this one a solid 4 stars and I would recommend it, and like I say, keen to find out where it's going next. The next one that I want to talk to you about is a book that I ended up reading on my Kindle. I was granted an early NetGalley release of it, and I think it came out just a few weeks ago, and that is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Now, if you followed my channel for any amount of time, you will probably know that TJ Klune is one of my favourite authors, so obviously I wanted to request his new book, and I was really pleased to get a copy of it. I had heard from various sources that this was a kind of Pinocchio-inspired retelling with queer elements, and I was like, sign me up, sounds fab, definitely something I was excited for, and it does have echoes of the Pinocchio story for sure, but it was not what I expected at all. It does not feel like a fairy tale, it definitely feels like a TJ book, just with some undertones thrown in of Pinocchio. Pinocchio in a reversed, weird kind of backwards situation, I suppose, because it's not Pinocchio, it's definitely different. You don't have to have any understanding of Pinocchio or anything to do with that to like this book and to get it and to enjoy it. So I would say if you like TJ's other work, you're probably going to like this. However, this one does have a lot more innuendos than some of his other books, like The House in the Cerulean Sea. So bear that in mind. I would say it definitely feels like a bit of a mashup of more of his self-published work with his traditional published work. This one feels a little bit more true to both sides, because I think there has been a difference in tone up until now with his works that have been traditionally published versus those that have been self-published, but I really like it and I found it a lot of fun. I think I gave this like a solid 4.5 in the end. We follow a couple of different characters, one of whom is Victor, our main character, and Victor is a human who lives in a very, very isolated scenario. He is completely away from the rest of the world. He has no connection to anyone except for his father and to a couple of robots who he lives with. We have Nurse Ratchet, who is a robot who just wants to fix people all the time, but her idea of fixing is more destructive than you might typically see from a robot. She is a very aggressive robot. She definitely has opinions about how things should go, and she's not afraid to share them, whatever the opportunity. So she's quite a brusque character to come across. She's quite abrasive, but I liked seeing her. She was different. She was something I wasn't expecting. We also have Rambo, who is a little vacuum character, and he is super anxious, and he is always kind of flustered about everything and doesn't quite know what to do with himself and relies heavily on Victor and Victor's kindness. Nurse Ratchet and Rambo kind of have this frenemy set up, I suppose, between them, and Victor is almost the moderator between the two of them at times. We also have a new character called Hap, who comes into the story relatively early, but we don't know an awful lot about Hap or Hap's origins or Hap's intentions, and a lot of the plot is to do with what will Hap become. This story really deals with friendship, it deals with bound family, it deals with kind of learning who you are as a person, questioning the world, questioning what upbringings are, and protection versus knowledge. There's a lot of big questions that I think TJ is asking here, and I liked understanding and reading them as well as just enjoying the plot because it is fun. I also think that this story has a lot of quirky moments. It definitely felt like an adventure. The actual storyline is focused at the beginning on the adventures that Victor and his robot friends have in the scrapyards, but quickly something goes very wrong in the scrapyards, and then all hell kind of breaks loose and their world is shaken to the core, and they have to go on this big adventure to find out what is really going on and what the world really is like now, because they don't really know. So I loved this one a lot. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars, no surprises because it's TJ Klune, and I really enjoy his stuff in general, and I would highly recommend it if you guys have not checked it out. So those are 3 books that I recently read that I very much enjoyed, and I'd love to hear if you guys have read any of them or if you're planning to read them. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.